And next up at UFC 324, we've got Alex Perez taking on Charles Inner G Johnson. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I'm going to take Johnson in this one. I think he's got too much length, too much movement. Uh, he's got good takedown defense. I mean, he can be taken down, but he's always finding his way to get back to his feet somehow. Perez, has beaten everyone he's supposed to beat, but the people that he's lost to are the elite. Which this as I pick Johnson, it doesn't make it an easy pick. I'm just picking Johnson because he's been more active. He's had more fights in the last year because Perez has been injured. I think that Johnson is probably he's feeling loose. He's feeling comfortable in the cage, and I think Perez is still getting his timing back. We had talked about it. He lost to Asu Amabayev by guillotine, I think, in his last fight. But he looked good against Almabayev, and Almabayev's a killer. How would Charles Johnson do against Almabayev? Probably the exact same way. And I just feel that Johnson's got a lot of movement. Perez has got to time that. He's got a lot of reach. And those are things that he's got to get over first to get inside. And I think by the time he finds out, that might be enough for Johnson to steal 2 rounds. So I'm going to take Charles Johnson in this one.
Yeah, I think this is a much tougher matchup than people are probably realizing this week. Charles Johnson, as Carlos mentioned, has been the more active fighter, obviously coming off of that knockout of Logan Kavanagh. I did not see that one coming, and I said to Carlos before we went to break this one down that when you look at Charles Johnson's performances, they're so up and down. He'll lose to a guy in Temerov and go ahead and knock out Joshua Van, the current champion, and then he'll knock out a guy like Logan Kavanagh and then have a decision victory over a guy in Jake Hadley you expect him to mop the floor with. So very, very up and down, very inconsistent, obviously 35 years old, very tall for the division, usually weaponizes his cardio. He can mix in takedowns, and his boxing is very long and straight to the target. I like that style fight here. If Perez does what he did against Asu Amabayev here, kind of tucking his chin and swinging overhooks, I think Johnson can definitely have the footwork and that long rangy jab to kind of pepper Perez all night long. But it's tricky because, as Carlos mentioned, if you look at the losses that Perez actually has here, Sumal Mabayev, Tatsuro Taira, Makayev, you've got, Pantoja. That's absolute murderer's row in this division. And obviously his victory that he was able to get over Nicolau isn't necessarily that impressive, but it just goes to show that he's still, ranked. He's still a high-level opponent, and he's still a guy that can definitely pull off an upset or at least pull off a victory in the higher levels of UFC at this point. And it kind of leaves me to kind of think, well, if Perez is the guy coming forward, he's the one mixing in takedowns, pushing the pace. He wants to get back in the win column after these streak of losses. He's going to fight a little bit desperate. And I don't necessarily think that Charles Johnson's the guy that's going to be able to sit down on a right hand and land a shot when a guy is coming in. I know you see the Logan Kavanagh fight and you point to that, or the Joshua Van fight, but let's be real. He was losing a lot of exchanges in those fights before landing that shot. I think it's just the range that catches people off guard. I think Perez has got enough experience, enough head movement here that he can pull off the upset. I'm going to pick Alex Perez. I'm not confident. I flipped back and forth on this one pretty much all week. I do like Perez's chances here. I think that Johnson doesn't have that sting in his shots to be able to keep Perez off of him. If you look at Asu Amabayev's fight, for example, in that last fight, Asu was able to get takedowns when he needed them, timely takedowns. He was able to land big shots to at least back Perez up at moments. I don't see that with Johnson. He's always fighting on the back foot. He's always circling out. I just think realistically he's more of a volume, weaponized cardio kind of guy. And I do think that Perez is a guy that realistically he's going to come forward. He's going to be desperate. He's going to mix in takedowns. He's going to fight for pretty much his UFC career at this point. And I trust his level of competition here. So I think he gets back in the win column. Obviously, his loss to Asu was only a month and 2 weeks ago, so not that long ago. I think he's chomping at the bit to get back and kind of go on a win streak of his own here in 2026. And to me, not to knock anything about Charles Johnson's performances, but I do think that some of them, they have a little asterisk behind them. I do think that they're kind of question marks about, he was losing up until he was winning, and especially in his last fight. You could point to the Joshua Van fight as well, but give me Alex Perez here to get this one done. I would say split decision, get back in the win column here for a UFC veteran.